All right. Well, it looks like we're about ready, so let's go ahead and head on down to the feature match area. The players are probably still shuffling up, but it's better to show those guys doing the pregame rituals than just staring at our goofy mugs. So on your right, you're going to have Ryan Hayes. He is playing the Breach deck with no combo. This is just a fair Underworld Breach. We're going to be drawing some cards off of it with Bobble. We're going to be playing a couple of removal spells, but mostly you're going to see Ragavan, Dragon Race Channeler, and Ledger Shredder tearing up the early game with Gigantha as a companion.
Yeah, just taking a look at Eric Rose's specific hammer list here. He's playing mono white hammer.
Mono white, that's actually been popular here versus the blue splash with Spell Pierce. I actually really like the mono white version.
Yeah, I agree. He's got some spice going on. It looks like we got some main deck Gemstone Caverns.
Ooh, main deck Gemstone Caverns
in this
crazy.
hammer list, and also a Sword of Fire and Ice. So that might come in very handy against this Jeskai Breach deck that's looking to interact more on the Lightning Bolt and Holy axis.
Yeah, awesome. I've never been a big fan of Spell Pierce, so I'm glad to see the mono white one shining here. So we're off to the races. Ryan Hayes is going to be on the play, leading off with a Ragavan. We're going to go down to 17 and back Rose's way. Turn one play from Rose. Is a Sigarda's Aid a powerful start, a scary start? How's Ryan going to interact with this thing?
I mean, that's the card that just puts the pressure on Ryan immediately. Sigarda's Aid allowing all equipment flash and auto attach on enters the battlefield. It's just so difficult to interact once that card's on the table.
A attack from Ragavan reveals a Colossus Hammer. I doubt he'll be playing that one. It looks like he does have access to a Prismatic Ending in hand, so might want to go ahead and knock off Sigarda's Aid before a flash threat can be put down. But something like Ledger Shredder keeps the gas rolling, and there's no creature from Eric Rose yet, so maybe not that scary.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see what Ryan opts to do here. That Sigarda's Aid's definitely tricky, especially if Eric, say, were to have another copy of Colossus Hammer in his hand. That would basically make that Lightning Bolt basically not going to do a whole lot because he could respond to any removal spell by casting another hammer.
Well, this could be a great use of a treasure here because we can go Ledger Shredder plus the Prismatic Ending and get a Connive, and that looks like what Ryan's going to do, and that is a nutty start, and Eric Rose might be in a lot of trouble here.
Yeah, we'll see if Ryan does remember the Connive, and there it is.
All right, hand has Underworld Breach, 2 lands, and a Dragon Rage Channeler, so curious what he's going to want to pitch here. Can keep the juice flowing with the DRC, getting rid of one of those extra lands, but you always want to be growing the Ledger Shredder when you can. We're going back Eric Rose's way.
And I do want to give a quick shout out to your normal casting partner here, Ross Merriam. Looks like he's in chat with us today now, playing some Breach. He'd certainly be more qualified to talk about it than I am. He'd beat me in an RCQ a couple times playing the Jeskai Breach deck as well. But we hope he's doing better.
Yeah, how's it going, Ross? All right, we got an attack here from Ryan Hayes. We're going to deal 3 damage. Going to knock Eric Rose down to 15. Treasure token. Land revealed, so no scare there. We have Breach. Can we do anything fun with it? Probably not. Just a Prismatic Ending in the graveyard, but we do got Dragon Race Channeler, which can fuel the Breach later. So a great start here from Ryan. Let's see if Rose can cobble together some sort of defense here. This Air Force is looking pretty scary. Bye, Gigantha.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely another maybe advantage of these fair Jeskai Breach decks, that you do get to play Gigantha as your companion. You know, doesn't have anything like Thassa's Oracle in the main deck to shut that axis off.
All right, here's a question for you. If you're in Eric Rose's spot, how do you win this game? How do you get back in it?
I mean, it looks like you're just going to have to go on the grind plan for a bit. That Urza Saga will hopefully keep that Ragavan in check. I think for a bit you just kind of have to hope that that Ryan's hand doesn't necessarily have much interaction. So we make a construct this turn, maybe be able to trade with that Ragavan. You know, you're not actually under that much pressure if the Ragavan's off the board, because it doesn't look like that Dragon Rage Channeler is delirious. So it actually is only a 2-point swing if the Ragavan's checked.
All right, well, here comes the token from Eric Rose. Let's see if there's any response from Ryan. Looks like he's going to let it trade. Ragavan down, 2 damage coming in. So this is my understanding of this matchup, or of the Jeskai Breach deck in general. Ledger Shredder just doesn't grow that often, at least when I play with it in Modern. It's much better in a format like Pioneer, where you have Treasure Cruise, so your hand has a lot of, redundant things going on, and it's mostly full. It's kind of like the idiom that, like, Treasure Cruise makes Brainstorm better, right? Because you
Sure.
just have more raw resources to filter with. We're gonna have an activation, make a token here before we go looking. Let's see what Rose wants to find.
Yeah, and that Urza Saga really doesn't help with Ryan's Ledger Shredder plan. Most of the time, if a deck's ahead on board, you're going to have to cast multiple spells
Right.
to catch up. But that Urza Saga just making it so Eric can use his plays efficiently without giving Ryan any extra looks or growing that Ledger Shredder at all.
That's a great point, and that's one that I think is not talked about a lot. Is Ledger Shredder does have that capability of just like bottlenecking your opponent's plays, because every time they play 2 spells, you get to loot. But Urza Saga really punishes cards like Ledger Shredder and cards like Counterspell or Spell Pierce, because you just don't have to play anything. It's just a land that generates a bunch of advantages.
Yeah, and here we see an Esper Sentinel coming down. That's a great one against this Jeskai Breach deck that's full of non-creature spells. Even that Underworld Breach, if you'd want to use it to its full potential, you want to be using your mana efficiently, and you'd either have to make a concession or give Eric an extra card here.
Yep. Ton of mana for Ryan. I believe he has a 5th land in hand and a Giganta. Spell Pierce not looking too hot. Probably going to just ignore that one for now, and probably will discard it next time Ledger Shredder is triggered.
Yeah, it looks like Eric Rose might have a couple copies of Blacksmith Skill in hand. I think I see those as well, which could be pretty good here. Just definitely will be good against that Lightning Bolt that Ryan just picked up.
Yeah, so Lightning Bolt in hand, but Eric Rose is tapped out, so we can bolt down a creature before attacks here that'll trigger the Dragon Rage Channeler and maybe allow it to have Delirium before attacks. Could go full in here. We could go Bolt, not pay for the Esper Sentinel, and then we can play Underworld Breach, and then we can play Bolt again, and then we can take care of both creatures, and that'll mean that the Colossus Hammer is not very threatening next turn. Could also maybe play Prismatic Ending too from the graveyard and kill the hammer as well.
Yeah, we'll see what Ryan wants to do here. If he cleans up the creatures, then Eric's definitely in a tougher spot, even with that hammer on the battlefield.
Yeah,
because
those blacksmith skills really shrink.
Yeah, exactly. And those, it looks like we are going for the bolt here on the construct token, especially because, if you're in Ryan's seat right now, you're probably worried about something like Pure Steel Paladin coming down and swinging this game, allowing an equip on the hammer. But if you control the artifact count, then that line's not available.
All right, well, Esper Sentinel was not paid for, but it looks like Eric may have missed the trigger. We'll see how that resolves.
Yeah, it certainly looks like that trigger did get missed.
All right, and then Hayes passes the turn back. Eric Rose untaps and draws. I like that gold chain. My man flexing on him.
I've been appreciating the different flex here. It looks like Eric's cards are basically all in Japanese.
Yeah.
And I'm a big fan.
Maybe that's why he missed the trigger. You can't read them.
Yeah, you never know.
All right, well, we got a Pure Steel Paladin from Eric Rose, and this could threaten to equip the hammer, but no third artifact, so no Metal Craft. And we're back Ryan Hayes' way. He did have Spell Pierce at the ready. Still does.
Yeah, now Eric's got a couple blacksmith skills in hand, so we'll see if Ryan is going to opt to play around that card. This might be a prime opportunity normally for something like that Underworld Breach. Go ahead and take care of these creatures with the Bolt Prismatic Ending already in the graveyard.
Right.
But it looks like Ryan might opt to just cast Giganta here. We'll see what he goes for.
He did fetch quickly, but I think he fetched quickly because he wants to go for a value breach, because we can just play a couple lightning bolts here. The Dragon Rage Channeler is going to kind of fuel the Underworld Breach as well, so you're kind of guaranteed to be able to play multiple things. It looks like we can go bolt and Prismatic Ending. So
yeah, something that's interesting here, we'll see if Ryan picks up on this, is that if he goes for the Prismatic Ending, then he could respond to a potential Blacksmith skill with the Lightning Bolt out of the graveyard as well.
Right.
But if you were to lead on the Bolt, then it's on the stack and you can't necessarily bolt again.
All right, well, we got 2 triggers on the stack. We're not quite sure what we're targeting with the Prismatic Ending yet. We'll see in just a minute if it resolves or if Eric wants to go for a Blacksmith skill to protect. But if it's on hammer, then this probably is fine.
Yeah, it's interesting, too, that Ryan chose to connive before looking with the Dragon's Rage Channeler.
Well, I think the joke is that you're 100% to do the Dragon Rage Channeler because you just want to fuel the cards in the graveyard.
Sure.
Maybe.
Looks like
we do have a Blacksmith skill.
Yeah.
And then we're going to Spell Pierce the Blacksmith skill. So Prismatic Ending still on the stack. If Eric Rose goes for another blacksmith skill here. Okay, it looks like we're not going to. Probably going to try to protect the pure steel paladin.
Yeah, and that's probably a heads-up play from Eric. The bolts face up in the graveyard, which means that we're not trying to fight over the Esper Sentinel anymore. He's determined that the Pure Steel Paladin might be more valuable, so we'll probably see the second Blacksmith skill here to protect the Pure Steel Paladin now that Ryan doesn't have any more resources available.
Yeah, we're going to wait for the surveil to finish before you give that information away. We're going to take a damage off the Horizon Canopy going down to 11. That is going to trigger the Connive because that's the second spell cast. And so we're going to grow, and now we'll see if we want to hold back one creature to block, and it looks like we do. 2 artifacts from Eric Rose next turn can turn on Metalcraft and equip the hammer, and it'll be pretty devastating.
Yeah, it looks like Eric might be getting a little flooded here. Looks like a couple planes in hand.
You know what would have helped with the flood, though? A couple extra cards off the Esper Sentinel.
That's true. He did remember the trigger on that last turn.
Okay.
But Sigard is 8 here.
That was not as scary when the hammer's already on the table, though.
Yep, and it looks like Eric doesn't have another play here.
All right, back Ryan his way. We did draw another Underworld Breach, and you're seeing the Fair Breach part of this deck really start to shine because those breaches just essentially mean multiple removal spells out of the graveyard every time, and Eric Rose packs it in. Ryan Hayes disruptive enough in game 1 to take it down. We're going to be moving to those players' sideboards. If you have... either sideboard up, which one do you have up?
Yeah, I've got Eric Rose's up here, so we'll start with him.
All right, let's list it off and then give me your best idea of what can come in.
Yeah, we've got 1 Path to Exile and a 4th Blacksmith skill. We've got Relic of Progenitus, a Pithing Needle, a copy of Manriki Gasari.
That's a nice one.
Yeah, that's for...
Not for this matchup.
Yeah, for the mirrors that you'd expect today. 2 March of Otherworldly Light, 2 Hallowed Moonlight, 3 Sanctifier on Vec, and 3 Drannith Magistrate. So Eric's got some good options here. Immediately, the Sanctifier on Vex and Drannith Magistrates leap out at me. Because Ryan's... Yeah, exactly. They shut down Underworld Breach for sure, but even Sanctifier just as a creature with protection from red, just hard to get off the table for the Jeskai Breach deck. That Blacksmith skill is looking particularly good as well. Maybe the March of Otherworldly Light, depending on how aggressively you want to go after the
I was actually curious what you thought about just going after the creatures. The creatures seem like, in this build in particular, that they are the focal points of the deck.
Yeah.
And if you bring in things like Path to Exile and March, those are probably going to be aimed at those creatures, right?
Yeah. And I mean, Ryan's not playing any Emery's not playing that artifact package.
Yeah, no
and
sagas
the
either.
fact that you saw multiple Dragon's Rage channelers means that Eric can likely suss out that we don't have any grinding stations going on here. So we'll see what kind of game plan he's opting to go for. But going after the creature seems like an excellent way to win, especially because Hammer's removal exiles these creatures,
right,
so they can't come back later off of an Underworld Breach.
All right. Well, Ryan's side of things, he's got some spicy things on the sideboard. I know he's got a couple of Monastery Mentors. What do you think about his sideboard?
Yeah, so looking at Ryan's sideboard here, we've got a couple of those Monastery Mentors that you mentioned. We've got 2 Path to Exile, 2 Flusterstorm, a Spell Pierce, 2 Engineered Explosives, 2 Wear Tear, 2 Lavinia, and a Spell Snare in addition to the Gigantha Companion.
All right. Well, I think from Ryan's side, we're probably going to look at being a little more interactive with things like Path to Exile. Because there's not a ton of removal, I actually kind of like the Monastery Mentor plan. You can just kind of overload their resources, and if they do bring in removal, they're going to be usually targeting your early creatures, so Mentor can carry the game. With that said, I don't know if that's the type of game plan you want to enact, because the games are going to be a little bit longer, but you're already naturally advantaged because you just have the card Underworld Breach in your deck. Other than that, Wear Tear seems great. Engineering Explosive seems awesome.
Yeah, I imagine you'd probably want the Path to Exiles as well, just as an additional insurance against any hammer-wielding creatures out there.
All right, as the players are shuffling up here for game number 2, just want to say thanks again to Apex Gaming for hosting this event and having Rasputin and myself come up to provide commentary. Fire off any questions you have in chat, and we'll try to answer them as best we can. The Jeskai Breach deck, this is not a combo deck. This is a fair Breach deck. This is a new iteration of the archetype, not one you're used to seeing in the hands of Ross Merriam or Jesse Robkin. You're used to seeing those Imries and Urza Sagas, but this one is way more like a Murktide deck that just happens to play Underworld Breach that just recasts some lightning bolts and stuff. It's pretty sweet.
Yeah, well, it'll be interesting to see what folks ought to do here in the coming weeks. This Jeskai Breach deck is very reminiscent of Murktide, as you said.
Mhm.
You're pretty much just utilizing your graveyard for this Underworld Breach as opposed to something like Murktide region.
Yeah.
So it'll be interesting to see how the format evolves to kind of fight on this more fair axis.
My favorite comparison so far has been that it feels like Dig Through Time.
Yeah, no, that's definitely true. I know a common line in the combo versions of Jeskai Breach were to simply play out a value breach, play Mishra's Bauble a couple of times, expressive iteration, really refuel for the long game. And it's very reminiscent of Dig Through Time, where you have a minimal investment, use your graveyard effectively, and end up with a ton of extra resources going forward.
All right. Well, turn one play from both players. Eric Rose starts with the extremely powerful Sigardazade. Ryan Hayes going to ignore that. Has Prismatic Ending in hand, but is instead going to deploy Ragavan. Sanctifier and Vec looks like it could be problematic, but that Prismatic Ending now just looks like it's probably going to take care of Paladin. Although it does, I don't know. Yeah, that makes way more sense.
Yeah, that Sanctifiers just presents such a problem, and it allows you to get in a Ragavan hit here, which reveals Pure Steel Paladin. Not going to go ahead and cast that one, just make the treasure, and likely pass the turn on back.
All right, Rose going to go to turn 3. Let's see if he has another creature to deploy. Looks like a Saga in hand, so might have some juice with that. See what else he's got. And Esper Sentinel. Hammer in hand, too. Ooh.
Yeah, I mean, that would look very nice if not for that Engineered Explosive sitting out in Ryan's hand here. That is going to be devastating if that comes down and cleans up all of these 1-drops. So it looks like we've got Steel Shaper's Gift coming out from Eric. We'll see what he wants to go ahead and find. It's likely going to be this Colossus Hammer.
Yeah, has a hammer in hand, but just getting more when you have Sigardazade chilling seems fine. Now, it is important to note that while Hayes does have the Engineering Explosives in hand, it will blow up his own Ragavan, so he's going to need to deploy another threat if he wants to stop that. Drew a good one here to Fairy Time Raveler. That's going to force Eric Rose's hand and make him play at sorcery speed, and then something like Lightning Bolt will be able to easily catch that Esper Sentinel slipping.
Yeah, I mean, if Ryan goes for this Teferi here, Eric's almost certainly going to have to deploy the hammer in response because that'll shut off that flash ability on Sigardazade. Looks like we're just going to see an attack from Ragavan, and
the extra mana might matter. You know, having that extra mana, you can pay for the Esper Sentinel off the Teferi and still have Lightning Bolt up. And you're fine with the trade as well, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Blacksmith's skill going to be the reveal.
Definitely not worth playing except to connive a Ledger Shredder, but I think Teferi is going to be the play here, and we'll see if Eric Rose remembers the Esper Sentinel trigger this time. Hayes going to fetch. Finds Basic Island to prevent a little bit of life loss. This is an aggro deck after all. The Mono White Hammer deck does win in one shot a lot, especially if your opponent takes a bunch of damage from stuff.
It looks like we are going to see the Teferi come down.
All right, we remembered. We pay. All right, Teferi resolves? Question mark?
Yeah, it looks like Eric wasn't interested in going for the hammer. And it's going to go ahead and bounce
Saga.
Saga.
That's lit. Bouncing Saga is so disgusting. And we have the Bolt all in the same sequence, and Ryan Hayes in firm control. This is honestly why I wanted Ryan on camera round 1, because Ryan sees all the angles.
Yeah, I mean, that was just a fantastic turn for Ryan. He even gets to hold on to this Engineered Explosives as kind of, the trump card in this matchup. But now we're going to see a main phase Esper Sentinel being equipped with Colossus Hammer. I don't think Ryan's going to have 11 mana to pay for that trigger in the future.
All right, but we have the ability to play EE and pop it, and that's going to put Eric in a bad spot. But he will draw a card off the Sentinel because Ryan doesn't have 10 mana to pay. And we're going to lose the Ragavan as well. So a lot of little things going on here. And we'll see if Eric can protect himself. Now, Blacksmith skill does give Indestructible, I think, to the Esper Sentinel.
It does, since it's an artifact. Yep.
But it would still blow up the Colossus Hammer and the Sigardazade. And those are the more terrifying ones at the moment, I think.
And does Eric have a copy of Blacksmith skill in hand?
I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Unclear.
Oh, the Teferi is also protecting against it.
True.
Blacksmith, so.
Yep. The static on Teferi often gets us. I am Twitch chat, you know.
Does that mean you found lethal already?
Yeah. Reverse lethal. Ryan Hayes is going to go ahead and play Underworld Breach. Interesting. This is the line. I guess that just means Prismatic Ending's coming. We're going to take care of the Esper Sentinel. And that's going to let us get in with a Ragavan.
Ryan's
Underworld
really...
Breach doing his best Snapcaster Mage impression, right? That was kind of cool.
I do love me a Snapcaster Mage, but yeah, Ryan's really prioritizing getting in with this Ragavan here, and traditionally, I mean, Hammer's been one of the better decks against the card Ragavan.
Right.
Just flooding the board with creatures, but Eric's draw has been pretty creature light, and Ryan's been taking full advantage of that.
What I really like from Ryan's side is it feels like he's played this matchup a ton from with a bunch of different Izzet style decks, because he knows kind of how to maneuver around a bunch of different things. And one thing I want to note is that this Engineering Explosives now is detrimental if he does it on 1, but he set it up so now he can do it on 0 and blow up the tokens from the Urza Saga and just ignore those 1-mana permanents on the battlefield.
Yeah, it looks like we've got a main phase construct being made here, and then another Colossus Hammer. That's the third copy we've seen between the Ragavan Exiles and Eric's natural draws here.
Yep. Draw for turn, Hayes finds a Mishra's Bauble that will trigger Dragon Rage Channeler and push it towards Delirium. We got Sorcery, we got Enchantment in the graveyard. So pretty close to Delirium with the artifact and the top card. We'll see what the play is. It could be Engineering Explosives on 0. Could be Engineering Explosives on 1. Yeah, 0 makes a lot more sense if you ask me.
Well, now we've got to worry about that Inkmoth Nexus that Eric did play. Because if Eric's able to find something like a Pure Steel Paladin, then that Inkmoth Nexus could just end the game immediately.
It could. I think with the Sigarda's Aid in play and 3 hammers already gone, I think that Pure Steel Paladin being the only thing you're really scared of means that you just have to ignore the Nexus as long as you can.
Well, that's interesting because now, because we've got that saga about to happen, what we could do if you're in Eric's seat is animate the Inkmoth Nexus with the saga trigger on the stack, and then put the hammer on the Inkmoth Nexus once you resolve the Urza Saga trigger, then reactivate it to give it flying. So you need to get this Dragon's Rage Channeler. Oh, I would say you probably want it to have flying post-combat to hang back. But now it looks like Ryan's just going to go for the Ledger Shredder off of the treasure that was made off of Ragavan as a blocker against that line.
All right, and as long as we remember to tick up this Teferi, we're in business. All right, back Eric Rose's way. We have a chump blocker. We're going to draw off the bauble.
Yeah, if Eric can find a path to exile, this game could just be over.
Yeah.
And he drew Pure Steel Paladin for turn. Now that becomes very interesting. We're gonna see what Eric goes for off of this Urza Saga search.
A lot of options. We can float a mana and then go get the 4th hammer. We can activate the Nexus and then put the hammer on the Nexus, but it will lose flying. Not a big deal because Ledger Shredder is in the way to block on the other side of things. Unsure. I think we have a judge question. I'm curious how this is gonna work on Eric Rose's side of things.
Yeah, he's pointing at the Pure Steel Paladin in his hand, so just a question.
You know what? I bet he's asking for Oracle text.
It could be.
Because it's in Japanese.
You know, as someone who also likes to play with Japanese cards, I understand the pain.
Yeah.
I do.
All right, so Pure Steel Paladin, 2 mana for a 2/2 Human Knight. When equipment enters the battlefield under your control, you may draw a card. It has Metalcraft. Equipment you control have equip 0 as long as you have 3 or more artifacts. This card is excellent in this archetype. It kind of acts like Sigarda's Aid 5 through 8, but oftentimes you get to cast this preemptively, and then you can just cast a bunch of your equipment to just cycle and draw cards.
Yeah, I think with that draw, it looks like we did animate the Inkmoth Nexus in response.
Okay.
So that's interesting. So I think we're probably going to go here and get Shadow Spear, actually. We're going to go ahead and give that Inkmoth Nexus trample, and then we're going to go ahead and cast the Pure Steel Paladin, equip the hammers, and try to go for lethal.
Okay, I like that. So the hammers say they lose the ability. So maybe he was asking if he could move the equipment of the Shadow Spear and then move it back? Or does it still have trample with Shadow Spear because it's attached to it?
Well, it's not losing that ability.
So hammer just makes it lose flying, right?
Yeah, hammer
makes
it lose flying.
Never mind. My apologies.
Yeah.
All right, so Eric Rose in the tank, looking through the deck, Saga trigger resolving. No mana floating because he did activate the Nexus with the mana. Just trying to figure out a sequence that can win the game here, and I think they have one as long as they have the Shadow Spear in the deck still.
Yeah, it's true. That might have been boarded out here. Eric's taking a long time going through the deck.
It is not usually one that you want in this situation, but he
there it
does have
is.
it. Okay. Does have it. Well, if it is Pure Steel Paladin in hand, then this looks like this could be game over.
Yeah, Ryan is tapped out. No mana available. It looks like this Pure Steel Paladin is going to end the game. Go ahead and make that Inkmoth Nexus a 22 power attacker.
Is that good or?
I think so. I think
Right.
so.
Oh, here. Oh, Sanctifier in the back.
Outfitter.
Yeah, sorry, core outfitter. You're right.
Yeah,
you're right.
so that's gonna enter the battlefield, equip. I don't believe that's enough damage. The Ledger Shredder is a 1/3, so that's only gonna be 9 points of infect coming through.
All right. Well, let's see if Ryan can untap and do something dirty. The Nexus. There are multiple Nexus in play. 9 poison. You don't need to equip them anymore, so the core outfitter no longer really a factor.
Yeah, and Ryan did gain what is that, 12 life off of that attack, so he's no longer in danger there.
All right, well, let's see if Ryan can find a way out of it. I'm not sure that there is one. That big life gain swing meant that he has to basically start over. This breach deck doesn't have a combo in it, so
yeah, he's probably gonna have to cash in this Teferi for a card here, but we'll see at what point he wants to do that. He's gonna have to generate multiple flying blockers, which means that this may be post-combat bounce my own Dragon's Rage Channeler and redeploy it along with the red Letter Shredder in his hand.
Yeah, that combined with the Lightning Bolt in hand could protect him for a turn. So good call on the finding the bounce my own Dragon Rage Channeler play. That's pretty sweet. Otherwise, I don't think his hand has a way out. It's a Mishra's Bauble. I think it's a Consider and a Bolt.
Yeah, I mean, the Bolt can take care of one of the Inkmoth Nexuses, and the Shredder can block the other one, so bouncing the Dragon's Rage Channeler might not be necessary. But we'll see what Ryan wants to do.
Oh, it's a Ledger Shredder. I thought it was a Consider in hand. My apologies. All right, so Shredder is going to be the start for Ryan. Then we're going to play Bauble. We're going to get some triggers. And the Dragon Rage Channeler does have to attack, so we'll probably have to hold back the Ryan.
Oh, Ryan's going for Lightning Bolt on the core outfitter here.
Okie dokie.
Which means that he's probably going to go for this post-combat bounce my Dragon's Rage Channeler line with the treasure that's going to be made off of the Ragavan.
Love it. All right. Ryan always comes up with cool plays, man. That's why I like having him on camera. We're going to swing for 5. We're going to keep pushing the pressure. Ragavan no longer needs to block because we did get the bolt.
Yeah, this is also just a great line from Ryan because it plays around the possibility of a blacksmith skill saving one of these Inkmoth Nexuses.
All right, Teferi going to bounce. Play a DRC off the treasure. Back Rose's way. 2 Nexus can come in, but they both get eaten.
And we see Ryan did have the blacksmith skill in hand. Picked up a copy of Stoneforge Mystic for the turn.
Well, Stoneforge is pretty good, but it doesn't do a ton this turn because A, it can't activate, and B, you don't have a creature that can attack and be equipped, since the Nexus does cost 1 to fire up. Gonna go ahead and look for an equipment here. It might be the 4th hammer. Might want to go get something like Cauldron Complete.
Yeah, that's definitely an option. Actually, I'm taking a look at Eric's deck list here. I don't see any Cauldron. Yeah, he's got a Nettle Cyst as the other.
And a Fire Nice too. Interesting.
Yeah, it looks like he did go for the hammer.
All right, let's see if he wants to go ahead and put that on a Stoneforge Mystic or wait. Unban, it is a very fun deck in general.
Going to equip the Stoneforge Mystic with
Shadow
Spear.
Interesting.
Pass the turn.
Maybe he wants to save the hammers for the Nexus so that Ledger Shredder is not able to eat the Nexus in combat. Now, we're in a similar spot as we were last turn. The DRC has to attack. And we're going to need an answer to the second Inkmoth Nexus since we are at 9 poison currently.
Yeah, I do like this play from Eric. Just making Ryan have multiple answers to these 2 Inkmoth Nexuses. Looks like we got Underworld Breach, Expressive Iteration, and a land over on Ryan's side. Imagine we'll probably see this Expressive Iteration.
It's funny, the Shadowsphere buff actually... Ooh, so we're going to go with Underworld Breach instead. So this is going to allow us to clear the Stoneforge, and then post-combat, we are going to be able to get the treasure and maybe do something with the treasure to stop the Nexus next turn.
All right, looks like we got Lightning Bolt probably going after the Stoneforge Mystic here.
Exiles 2 baubles. I wonder if he has another bauble in there.
Oh,
Out
you
of
know
mana.
what Ryan might be trying for is he might be trying to go below Delirium pre-combat so he can keep the Dragon's Rage Channeler back and then re-establish Delirium post-combat. But all right, doesn't look like that's what's going on.
Might have just done it. He let's see. So maybe it's not possible. Could have maybe done it with the baubles though.
Yeah, quite possibly. He did exile a couple of baubles, but his graveyard's pretty stacked up. So he did exile the bauble. Looks like he's got one left here.
Okay, so can play some baubles pre-combat, attack with Ragavan, get a mana, and then post-combat maybe turn the DRC back on, have 2 flying blockers and a mana. He has Wear Tear in hand, but not enough to cast the one that destroys artifacts. Can only cast the one that destroys enchantments for the 1 white.
And Ryan just considering his options here. Definitely against the gun a bit. That 9 poison just...
Bottlenecking his plays.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, we're going to essentially manipulate our graveyard in such a way where we're going to intentionally lose Delirium. Top card.
So he's still thinking about that Surveil. And I believe this is the Connive as well. I think this is his second spell for turn.
Breach plus Bolt was the second spell.
The Bolt,
I think he's already done the Connive. I think he's discarded I don't know what he discarded. Maybe he missed it. Impossible to tell, really. All right, Bauble. We're going to look. Can't see. Right now, we are...
Everything coming in.
Oh, are we going for lethal? Is this potentially lethal attack 3, 7, 8, 9? Can we go Bolt and that's 1 short?
Yeah.
Or are we going to Prismatic Ending something?
Ryan's at 6, makes 1 more mana. Looks like a mana short here.
Might have punted. Seems weird because I feel like Ryan was very in control of this turn and then maybe just miscounted damage. Or maybe missed Ledger Shredder trigger, thought he had lethal somehow. Okay.
Alright, gonna go for another bauble. It's possible that Ryan saw a bolt on top of his own library, but that doesn't get him out of it if Eric decides to go for both Inkmoth Nexuses.
Right.
There is a bolt.
Okay, well, let's see if Rose goes for it. Gonna fire up 2 Nexus and attack. And Hayes Paxton couldn't figure it out. Maybe made a mistake.
And it seems like Ryan was a little frustrated with himself there at the end of that game.
Yeah, I mean, that's an insanely tough sequence. So Underworld Breach just offers like 1,000 different ways to, mess up. So Ryan obviously beating himself up a little bit, but a very interesting turn and one you could probably dissect over the course of an entire YouTube video,
Absolutely. All right, but we're going to be going on to game 3 here. Ryan on the Breach deck going to be on the play. So we'll see how that influences his sideboard plans. It seems like Eric was pretty content there to not necessarily fight over the creature so much in that game with that Inkmoth Nexus draw. But we'll see if being on the draw here leads him to be a little more reactive.
So you have to think at some point, Ryan went Injury Explosives for 0 just to kill 1 token. Now, at some point, he could have played EE on 1 and blew up like a creature and a hammer and the Sigardizade, but it would have blown up his own Ragavan as well. But I think that maybe that was the turning point in the game. If he just sacrifices, 2 cards for 3 cards, and then tries to rebuild his threat base after that, maybe he ends up winning that game. But, just a very well-sequenced game from Eric and slight messed up from Ryan.
Yeah, Eric definitely played that game very well, played to his outs. That second Inkmoth Nexus rolling off the top was definitely a huge factor as well. But we'll see how they decide to approach this match for game number 3. It looks like not much change from Ryan's side based on the speed at which he sideboarded. Eric's considering a little more heavily now that he's on the draw. We might see something like the Marches potentially
Right.
come in on the draw, extra answers to a Ragavan on one.
A little more interaction on the draw definitely makes sense. Cutting stuff like blacksmith skill, in my opinion, also makes a little bit of sense when you're on the draw because you just are less likely to be able to hold up mana to protect. It obviously can come in handy in a number of scenarios, so maybe it's worth keeping. As someone who's played a ton of Infect in the past, like I understand the dynamic of needing to hold up mana to save your creatures from stuff, and when you're on the draw, it's just much more difficult.
Yeah, we'll also see if those main deck copies of Gemstone Caverns come into play here with Eric on the
A little bit of luck
draw.
on a side can get anywhere,
Yeah, you know what they say, it's better to be lucky than good.
That's true.
Although Eric certainly played that last game very well.
All right, so we're going to draw opening hands here for game number 3. Ryan Hayes on your right, playing the combo-less breach deck that we have been talking about so far today. Looks like a 2-lander and a pretty good one at that.
Yeah, you see a copy of Wear Tear there, Bauble, Expressive Iteration, and a Dragon's Rage Channeler. Full of the classic threats plus interaction combo that you like to see in these Izzet-based decks.
All right. Lightning fast start from Ryan Hayes. He's going to lead off with a Dragon Rage Channeler and follow that up with Mishra's Bauble. It's going to give Surveil 1, and we're going to be pushing toward Delirium here pretty quickly.
And it looks like Eric was not lucky. No Gemstone Cavern.
Yeah. Unluck. Top card from the Surveil. Ryan Hayes tanking on it. Puts in the graveyard. It's just a land. Has one more in hand, so maybe doesn't want the third one, or just assumes that he's going to draw it eventually, and does.
Yeah, and that Mishra's Bauble is going to show Ryan that Eric picked up a copy of Urza's Saga, and then we've got a copy of Esper Sentinel, and it passes it back.
All right, so Hayes here, untapping further turn 2, has a bunch of options, but none of them feel that great. Probably, if I had to guess, going to offer the trade here, but has a Wear Tear in hand. My guess is just going to play nothing, and that's the case. Eric Rose's turn 2. Let's see if he can get Stoneforge Mystic or some other threat onto the table.
Goes for Horizon Canopy there over something like the Urza Saga that Ryan Hayes already is aware of. So it looks like we might have that Sanctifier on Vec coming down. There's a copy of Stoneforge Mystic as well. It could also just be that he's got a 1-drop and wants to hold up Blacksmith Skull.
Yep. The options are endless.
Yeah, it's a Giver of Runes as well, but it looks like Eric's going to go for this Sanctifier.
All right, and we'll see if Ryan has the answer. Doesn't look like he has one in hand yet. He has Teferi that can bounce, but that does offer a free card draw from the Esper Sentinel.
Yeah, that Lightning Bolt that Ryan just picked up, not going to do it either. Ryan's got surprisingly few answers to something like Sanctifier on Vec in the deck. It's got a couple copies of Prismatic Ending and those 2 copies of Teferi. But this Sanctifier keeping everything in check and keeping this Dragon's Rage Channeler down.
Yeah, I mean, the dual nature of the Sanctifier, right? Not only does it have protection from red and black, but it also just, like, exiles things from the graveyard statically, and that just makes the Delirium almost impossible to maintain. But Hayes here, going to play Wear Tear. This is with the Saga trigger on the stack. We're going to get to draw a card from the Esper Sentinel, but it's going to blow up both the Sentinel and the Saga for 3 mana.
Yeah.
And we get a Surveil.
Extremely notable that that Urza Saga ability, granting it the ability to add mana, is a Saga trigger.
Right.
So Ryan very astutely there blew it up before it had any game text on it whatsoever. Yeah. But we're going to see a Stoneforge Mystic here from Eric as follow-up.
Yeah, great timing from Ryan. We'll see if Eric can keep on with the pressure. Stoneforge going to get the Colossus Hammer, not that scary without Sigarda's Aid on the table, but we'll see if Eric can have that or Pure Steel Powder in the next few turns to make the hammer into something a little more terrifying.
Yeah, just another land picked up there for Ryan. His draw's not necessarily coming together the way he would have liked, especially against the Sanctifier.
Yeah, but we do have a nice turn here, right? We can play Teferi, we can bounce Sanctifier, we Surveil, we can play Bolt, hitting Stoneforge Mystic, we can Surveil, and that clears up the side of the table for now. And if Eric wants to redeploy the Sanctifier back, he has to basically spend an entire turn, and that just gives Ryan a lot more time to find the Prismatic Endings to make it no longer viable, or to find non-red cards to go to the graveyard to turn on Delirium so that eventually the DRC can attack over the Sanctifier.
Yeah, we will see the Teferi here triggering the Dragon's Rage Channeler. Looks like we're leaving that one on top, and we'll see what Ryan opts to do with this Teferi.
All right. We're going to bounce the Sanctifier. We're going to draw that card. It's another Bolt. Nice. We're going to take care of that. We're going to Surveil again. That one's going to go to the graveyard. That's a Ragavan.
Yeah, it looks like that'll enable an attack for 3 here with the Dragon's Rage Channeler. If that Sanctifier does come back down, it will, of course, exile the Ragavan and the Lightning Bolt, provided Eric remembers the trigger. So that Dragon's Rage Channeler will quickly come back down to Earth. But we'll see what Eric wants to do here.
Yeah, it looks like does have just a ton of cards in hand. Stoneforge Mystic replacing itself. But Sanctifier here is going to exile those 2 red cards from the graveyard. We'll see if there's a land.
Yeah, it looks like Eric is holding on to a copy of Pure Steel Paladin as well, but that's going to be Giver of Runes coming down.
Yeah, no artifacts though, so the Pure Steel Paladin not that scary until there's Metalcraft.
Copy of Ragavan picked up for Ryan here.
All right, we have Expressive Iteration. That's probably going to be the play. We're going to look for a way to deal with Sanctifier. We already have a way to deal with Giver of Runes. We have the Bolt in hand. Ragavan going to go to Exile Zone. Not looking so hot against Old Sancti.
And Breach and a couple of Dragon's Rage Channelers are the Expressive Iteration pile here.
That seems pretty good. I don't know. Maybe the Breach is bad. We just put that on bottom.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like the Breach is going to do too much here, but Ryan is going to take it.
Well, it does work nicely with baubles and lands, and if you have 2 Dragon Rage Channelers on the table, then the baubles kind of like self-fuel themselves almost. It's like, you know, 2 cards mill, draw a card, 2 cards mill, draw a card until you have no graveyard left.
Yeah, so Ryan's just going to be looking for a way to take care of this Sanctifier on Vec, and then that Underworld Breach plus these Channelers can start going off, as it were.
All right, he's going to leave it on top. That's interesting to note because if you have an Underworld Breach in hand and you surveil 2 things to the top, you have to imagine it's a good one. So it's probably Expressive Iteration number 2, maybe another Teferi, or some way to deal with Sanctifier.
Yeah, it looks like an Inkmoth Nexus was picked up here for Eric. So he's looking at Pure Steel Paladin, Colossus Hammer, Urza Saga, Inkmoth Nexus, and a Blacksmith Skill at least. I think there might be one other card there as well.
Blacksmith Skill could be clutch, but Sanctifier here can kind of rumble in and just kill the Teferi, and that would unlock Blacksmith Skill and a bunch of instant speed interaction from Eric's side of things. With that said, it allows the DRCs to attack, but it's only for 2, so it's not that big of a deal right now.
Yeah, Ryan does have that copy of Ragavan, I believe, still as well, so he'd be able to dash that out. And plus, you haven't noticed that Ryan's got a couple of pain lands here that have been thoroughly depleting his life total, but here we see a Sigarda's Aid coming down, and that is absolutely going to put the pressure on Ryan.
Well, we have at least 1 Colossus Hammer in hand, so we know we can deal at least 12 damage.
Looks like Eric's going to take a couple points here and deploy Pure Steel Paladin, followed by Colossus Hammer. That's going to let him draw a card.
All right, Eric Rose going to equip there and smash in for 12. This is almost assuredly going face. Ryan going down to 3 life, and we'll see if he can find a way to deal with Sanctifier this turn.
Yeah, we'll see what the draw is. Ryan, I believe, does know what that card is off of the Surveil. Not going to show us, but is Engineered Explosives. Engineered Explosives for 2, going to go ahead and take care of the Pure Steel Paladin and the Sanctifier on Vec. That is just what the doctor ordered.
Yep. Now we can go ahead and blow the EE, and that's going to... It's not quite Delirium. It's very close. We can tick up the Teferi, so now we have a bounce next turn, and now smash in for a couple points. No haste damage from the other side. No. Oh, is there a Ginger Brute?
There is a Ginger Brute in the list, but Eric cannot go ahead and get it just quite yet off this Saga, but he would be able to next turn. That Inkmoth Nexus is in hand, and I believe I spotted a copy of Core Outfitter as well.
Okay.
So Eric's got multiple avenues to lethal here next turn. But is it 7? Yeah.
Might be too late. There's Underworld Breach from Haze's side of things. So Underworld Breach plus fighting something like Lightning Bolt could easily close the game on this turn. And you're seeing really the strength of the Breach deck, you know, the combo-less Breach deck.
Got Ledger Shredder here as the pickup. Eric does have the ability to make a construct token. Looks like this is going to be an Underworld Breach.
Well, if the only, let's see, we have a breach token, or sorry, we have a Nexus blocker and a Saga token, but EE on 0 and something like a Lightning Bolt could potentially stifle the ability to block completely.
Yeah, Ryan's going to lead on a Mishra's Bauble here. Trigger both these Surveils. Bolt in the graveyard, that's gotta be game.
Yeah, we can just play 2 bolts right now and then attack with everybody, and that's easy lethal. Unless, with no ability to play Shadow Spirit instant speed, this has to be game. Here come the knuckleheads.
Everything crashing in. Those Dragon's Rage channelers are delirious. The Animate Inkmoth Nexus looks like an attempt to block.
Yeah, it says blocks are fine. I got 2 bolts coming at you. You're going to take 5 damage, down to 2 life.
Yeah, and that bolt is going to wrap up this match.
Nicely done from Ryan Hayes. He takes it down 2-1 with that Jeskai Breach, no combo versus Eric Rose's Mono White Hammer. Congrats on the victory. And that's obviously a great stepping point for our previous champion here, Ryan Hayes, looking to make it a back-to-back as we roll into February and the Season 2 championship coming up with a bunch of money on the line.